In 13 days, Americans could get their first and perhaps only opportunity to see Vice President Kamala Harris and ex-President Donald Trump on equal footing on a debate stage. And yesterday, Mr. Anytime, Anyplace said he will be there on September 10th. But there seems to be one big issue that's still unresolved: whether or not the mics of both candidates will be live for the entire time. Now, the Harris campaign would very much like them to be on so that you, me, everyone watching can hear all the crazy things he says. As for the Trump team, they are less keen on that, it's safe to say, for the exact same reason. Cornell, Sarah, and Aaron are all back. I just want to start. The wonderful team at Deadline pulled up some past performance moments of Trump to remind us all about the microphone. So I'm going to play those, and then we'll talk about it.
Under the current mayor, crime has continued to drop, including murders. So there is.
Wrong. You're wrong.
No, I'm not.
Murders are up. All right, you check.
New York.
No, you're telling the enemy everything you want to do.
No, we're not.
See, you're telling the enemy everything you want to do. No wonder you've been fighting. No wonder you've been fighting ISIS your entire adult life.
Folks, that's go to the fact checkers, get to work. It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
God, I want to make
Mr.
sure.
Mr. President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that. He has,
You'd be surprised.
I'm not going to answer the question.
Why would you answer that
because
question?
the question
you want to put a
is,
lot of
the
new
question
Supreme Court
is,
justice,
the
radical
question,
left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is?
That's a person with very little self-control. So I feel pretty strongly that the mics being on is a real key thing here. But I want to start with you, Sarah. What do you think as to, about the Harris campaign pushing so hard for it and what it will show the public?
Yeah, look, absolutely they should fight for him to have the mics unmuted, because the more that voters see of Donald Trump, the less they like him. And everything, whether it is kicking Trump off Twitter or Facebook, whether it's having the mics muted, anything, whether it's not showing his rallies, the more you hide Trump from the American people, the more you allow the rules of the game to protect him from himself, then the less voters are able to see him clearly. And you want people to see him clearly. Donald Trump, in that clip that you just played against Biden when they debated in 2020, that was it for Trump. I remember doing focus groups with voters after that debate. They thought Trump was unhinged, out of control. And that was the thing that turned a lot of people who at that point were on the fence. That was the thing that pushed them against Trump. And you got to understand, the biggest coalition in American politics right now, it is an anti-Trump coalition. But you do have to remind people what it is that they don't like about Trump. And, it's not so much policies. They just think Trump is crazy, nuts, unpredictable. And when he shows them that, that's the thing that pushes undecided voters to the place of, oh, yeah, I can't vote for this guy. It's too much.
Which is so interesting because it's like a knee-jerk moment watching it. I also want to play some of Harris because it's important to remember. It's different who you debate against, but let's play that. And I want to talk about that too.
But Susan, this is important, I want to add. But Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
Yeah, you can have 15 more seconds, and then we'll give the Vice President a chance to respond.
So I want to ask the American people: how calm were you when you were panicked about where you're going to get your next roll of toilet paper? How calm were you when your kids were sent home from school and you didn't know when they could go back?
Okay, so to put it mildly, Donald Trump is not as polite as Mike Pence. Not a lot of other things. It's always about people being matched up in a debate. We haven't seen Harris and Trump match up before, but Trump has debated a lot. So if you're the Harris team, they're preparing for this, even while they're on the bus tour. What are you thinking about as you're watching these past debates and past tape of Trump?
I think I got to underline what Sarah was pointing out here is that one of the things that's missing from this conversation about the last presidential debate between Biden and Trump is sort of overshadowed by Biden was also Trump's really poor numbers coming out of that debate. Like from the research that I've seen about that debate, voters didn't like Trump at all. Right? Trump did not do himself any favors in that debate. All that got overshadowed by Biden, but Trump was not looked as favorable in that debate. So, again, let Trump be Trump to that point where more voters see Trump, the less they like him, the more they see he's unhinged, the more he rambles, the more he's divisive, the more rude he is. Again, Americans are tired of that, and they know in their real lives that's not real adult behavior. And do we want our commander-in-chief behaving like that? So I think it makes all the sense in the world, but I also understand if I'm the Trump campaign, mute that mic.
No, they wanted to mute it for the same reason. Okay, Aaron, we didn't play this, but I think everybody may remember the moment where Trump creepily came up behind Secretary Clinton during the town hall debate in 2016. And that was a very weird gendered power moment in my view. It's not, the debate is not set up the same way, but he could do some weird physical things. So if you're the Clinton team and you remember that moment, if you're the Harris team and you remember that moment with the Clinton debate, how are you thinking about that? Like the physicality and kind of the gross gendered way that Trump approaches things?
You know, Jen, it's so interesting. I actually thought about that moment too when I was watching the Trump-Clinton debate. And, funny story, you have the Vice President Harris actually remarked on that debate, several years ago. She called that moment weird. The way that he was stalking her, she called that moment weird. So, that was kind of what she thought her strategy would be to Trump when he, actually got into Clinton's physical space in the way that he did, which certainly did feel very creepy for so many people who were watching that back in 2016. So, no, those will not be the dynamics of this particular debate, but absolutely, I think the Donald Trump that we saw on Truth Social last week, posting during the convention, very agitated by what he was seeing on the screen night after night, and with Harris and Walz and their message of joy. I think wanting voters to see that in real time on a debate stage is certainly the goal of the Harris campaign. Not to mention the fact that we just saw last month at the NABJ convention when Donald Trump is sharing a stage with a black woman, it usually does not go very well for him. And so he doesn't really have an answer, and he tends to kind of unravel. And so I think that is certainly a possibility. And so having that happen in real time with an unmuted mic, I think it could certainly advantage Kamala Harris, who we know is a skilled debater. She's proven that. She proved that in 2020, and proved it when she was debating Vice President Pence, and also, obviously her record as a senator in those Senate hearings. Like, people are looking to see that Kamala Harris again on the stage on September 10th. And so if we get that, I think this could be a very interesting 90 minutes.